Hey everybody, this is Boom.
And I'm Spice, and this is the first episode of Boom's Brainchild Fantasy Friday.
Yes, it is. Good times. We're very excited about this series.
Thrilled. What book are we doing first, Boom?
This book is called Something Wicked This Way Comes from Ray Bradbury.
There's an interesting idea here, like something that hasn't happened to us before. We have the same copy of the same book. It's meant to play on the carnival motif. It's the pattern that they chose, along with the font. It's very whimsical.
Yeah, it's an attractive book cover. It looks nice on a shelf.
Now, what format are we going with? Are we going to start with the same stuff we usually say, like how would you read it, should you read it, why?
I think so. I think with some of these that we're going to get to in the fantasy series, it's going to be a little bit different when we start getting into like high fantasy kind of things, because then there's a lot more like systems to discuss, like magic systems, stuff like that.
Especially with the next one.
Yeah, and with this one, it's not so much because it's more like almost like supernatural vibes, and the writing is more what you're looking at. So I think regular format's going to work pretty well for this guy.
All right, fantastic. Would you recommend it to someone else?
I would, and I think it has like a perfect time to be read also, which is like right around when we did.
For backstory. Boom and I read this in the hopes of recording it for Halloween, and we never recorded it for Halloween. So then we planned on recording it afterwards for Fantasy Friday, and it took months and months and months, and now we're ready.
Yeah,
thank goodness.
But yeah, it totally fills or scratches the itch for like a Halloween eerie book, to be curled up in some starting to get cold weather. I
absolutely agree. It's very evocative of that autumnal sort of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And did you go digital or paperback?
I kind of went a mixture of both, which I'm starting to do more lately. But I did read the majority through Audible, and then finished with the book, and then kind of went back through the book again since it's been a little bit to make a couple little dog years. But the audiobook was pretty good. I don't know who narrated mine, but he did a good job of coming off like spooky.
Mm-hmm. So I've never done the Audible version of this. I've exclusively used my paperback that I've owned since my first year in college, so it's been a handful of years. And I've enjoyed it. I read it for a Gothic lit class that is spawned our Kindred, Rebecca. A lot of the books I've read have been through that course, and I'm very appreciative of that, because I enjoy this book quite a bit. Now let's get on with the show.
All right, I guess we can go before we get into. We're gonna do our spoiler section.
Of course.
I guess this one it's not as important to mention whether we spark noted or not, because this is the fantasy series.
Yeah, exactly.
We presume that you want to read these books.
Yeah, don't.
Don't
spark notes.
This isn't one that you're assigned.
Yeah.
Unless it is, I mean.
Then
even
do what you need to.
Yeah. But I guess we'll get into the meat and potatoes here.
So before we go on to the spoilers, next Friday that we release, not necessarily the next Friday, we're doing Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn. It's a gift from Boom to me for Christmas, which I greatly appreciate.
Yep, it's going to be the first book in the series, The Final Empire. And it's a pretty cool. I'm excited I'm glad to have somebody reading it that I know.
Yeah.
That's the struggle I have a lot of the times is knowing that I know is into a lot of the books that I read, or all, or fantasy leaning books that I read. And I can't convince family to do it. So,
hey man, I'm
happy for a podcast, pal.
Exactly. I'm happy to read it alongside you, man. I'm about 200 pages in, but I read it all today, so I should be good by sometime next week potentially. And so next time it'll be Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn. And for all of our friends who are departing us now, as we venture into the world of spoilers, we hop in the ferry and cross the river Styx. We thank you for joining us for our non-spoiler section. And I hope you join us some other Friday so we can, join each other in cherishing these books. Until then, I've been Spice.
And I'm Boone. And we'll see you around.
See you then. Welcome back. I like the idea of making it shorter and shorter.
And we're back.
So for starters, I find this one quote interesting because Boom and I have been looking into informal criticism of a lot of the books we like. That may spawn its own series. Because Goodreads is like the Rotten Tomatoes of the book world. And I find a lot of the reviews there really surface level. The negative ones, at least. Mm-hmm. And one of them is that Ray Bradbury stacks metaphors on each other, which I've never found to be difficult to parse. I don't know what kind of reading comprehension you have where you can't, separate these sort of ideas. Unpacking it's part of the fun for me.
Well, that's what I would say about that. I think that adds to some enjoyment of it.
Exactly.
Like if I were to make a comment, I'd really like his style in this.
So on page 196, the chapter 42, it says, somewhere in the recumbent solitudes, the motionless but teeming millions of books, lost in 2 turns right, 3 dozen turns left, down aisles, through corridors, toward dead ends, locked doors, half-empty shelves, somewhere in the literary spot of Dickens' London or Dostoevsky's Moscow, or the steppes beyond, somewhere in the volumed dust of Atlas or Geographic, sneezes pent but set like traps, the boys crouched, stood, lay sweating a cool and constant brine. See, reading this aloud is important because that doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't try and enunciate it. Because if you just read it like a robot where you're like somewhere in the recumbent solitudes, the motionless but teeming millions of books, lost in 2 turns right, there's no tastefulness to that. If you take your time, sort of get like, all right, so here are directions to where they are, and then here's a more figurative form of directions, and then you get to what they're actually doing down there. And once you do that, you get it. Like that seems like the sort of passage where those people would have been like, what's going on here? Like there's another one on 197 where it goes, immensely patient, the soft voice, ever the warmest friend to chilly creatures burrowed away, nested amongst dry books. So he scuttered, crept, scurried, stalked, tiptoed, wafted, stood immensely still among the primates, the Egyptian monuments, the bestial gods, brushed black histories of dead Africa, stayed a while in Asia, then sauntered on to newer lands. Like it's flowery language. We understand what's going on. This dude's walking around a library. That's exactly what's going on. But if you don't dress it up like that, then it's not a fun passage.
Yeah, exactly. If you're, it's like if you're just walking across the library, why not say it in a way that's entertaining?
I think the people who read this were too old to enjoy it. Like the people who read this and went, "What's going on here?" Like I can imagine reading this aloud to a child, and that's a part of the enjoyment for me. where it's like, the cadence he builds into it. Immensely patient, that soft voice, sing-songy almost.
Yeah. Yeah, he uses some really interesting metaphors in there too. I forget exactly the passage before I was book version of it, but they're walking through like cold air, and they're like he's talking about how they're eating ice cream as they're walking through this, and it's like I've never heard anything like that for descriptive words and stuff, and it made me almost like pause and try to figure out how to mark like where in the chapter that is. But, I was driving.
I'm looking at a similar one where on 197 it goes, "Come out," Mr. Dark purred the air around his teeth. "I guarantee rewards. Whoever turns himself in wins it all." Purred the air through his teeth. Come out. One of those deals. It's I like the tension he builds here. Like, it continues. "I hear you." Mr. Dark's lips quivered. "Closer now, Will. Jim. Isn't it Jim who's the smart one? Come along, boy." And it's really interesting that I can imagine, this lends itself very well to adaptation, I said before, because the tension it builds, but it's not so scary. Because it's like, this book was never going to end in two children dying. Like, it wasn't.
No.
It's not that kind of book.
Yeah, no, it's not it's not what you'd expect of like a horror. It's more just a thriller.
Yeah.
And it's something that, I'd feel comfortable recommending this to anybody.
Yeah. I enjoy the not coming of age, which obviously is in there,
Mm-hmm.
but I think what I enjoy the most is the father's reckoning with getting older, because I feel like that's very grounded. We've discussed before how slice of life elements can be in more supernatural settings, like the reaction to Frankenstein. In a lot of cases, were very grounded. In this case, his reaction to the carnival is very grounded. The idea of this guy who's had these very real issues with growing older, slowing down while his son's still in the prime of his life, and this being juxtaposed with the idea of this carnival that actively de-ages people all the time, and really, it's a temptation, a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like the idea that he could become younger if he wanted to.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what that carnival feeds on, or that's how it runs. Is these people's desire to have what they don't.
Exactly.
And with him, especially having his kid so late in life, as he describes, it's got to just be even more, severe for him.
Right.
So yeah, it's really cool the way he's able to come to terms with that and end up seeing the carnival and Mr. Dark for who they are and what it is.
Yeah, con men.
Mm-hmm.
And saboteurs.
Yeah, it turned out, the way, it turned out he was my favorite protagonist of that whole thing. Because I would imagine it's the two kids who are the main guys.
Yeah.
Jim definitely has the coolest last name, but then
Nightshade.
that's cool. That was cool right off the bat. But no, I towards the end when they're in the library, getting ready for their, the final battle between everybody.
Yeah.
And he starts going off on all of his tangents about life and the way people are. I like that quite a bit.
The father has always been the emotional center for me, which is a funny subversion. So you'd assume it's the two young protagonists, but no, it's the dad who's got the most interesting arc, the way he grows throughout the story. Which I think is important because people act like, I hate to pick on her again, but Harper Lee, the whole idea of your entire life changing in a summer is not super duper reasonable. Sure, pivotal moments can happen then, but no one changes overnight. So the idea of these two boys completely changing throughout this 2-month span, if that, is totally unrealistic. Which, I mean, it's a haunted carnival.
Yeah.
But, that's a part of what makes it interesting. You could be these boys. And the fact that the father grows more because it's more relevant to his ideas, more relevant to his experiences and what he's going through right now, is striking. I enjoy that quite a bit. That it specifically targets him or people like him. Do you have any quotes you'd like to explore?
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it. All right, I'll pull out a little quote from here, but this is a scene I really liked a lot.
Yeah.
And it's when they're doing the demonstration with the witch, and Mr. Dark calls on Charles to shoot this gun to get something off. Like, it's like one of their attractions.
Yeah.
And he pulls him up there, and it talks about like this inner kind of struggle he has with, like, is this going to actually do anything? Like, is my, because he learned that the weakness is just taking it for what it is. Like, this is a carnival. This isn't real. Like, they're hurt by us not being afraid of them.
It's like a Freddy Krueger type deal.
So he goes to take this gun, and they talk about him drawing a crescent moon into it, or a strange symbol.
Yeah.
And then, like, when he whispers under his breath, like, to the witch who can't hear, he says on page 226, this is what he's mouthing to the witch. The crescent moon I have marked on this bullet is not a crescent moon. It is my own smile. I have put my smile on the bullet in the rifle. And then he said it once. He waited for her to understand. He said it again, silently. And this is, at the same time, the Illustrated Man, Mr. Dark, is comprehending it too, and then he pulls the trigger, and it kills her. He kills her with his smile. Just the notion of his smile being on the bullet is enough to smite these beings. Like, that's just kind of cool. It's like a chilling thing for them. Because it's something that I imagine, if they're still doing this, they've never had to, like, be really, really afraid of these people killing them, because they're the ones who bring the horror. Mm-hmm. And just by bringing kindness or, happiness, they're destroyed.
And clearly, if she's willing to be shot by him, it's happened before, and she's bounced right back up. I think that's a really interesting passage. Yeah,
and then, as he's loading it up, he has to reassure himself, like, this is gonna happen.
Exactly. It's not just for them; it's for him. Mm-hmm. On page 178, on chapter 39's first page, there's some really interesting figurative language where it goes, every night-blind library window chattered with cold. Like, it's just little personification bits there where it's like it really imbues the place with life, Like, windows don't chatter, but, we can always imagine based on the frost that's on them and stuff. Mm-hmm. Apologies. I really enjoy little pieces like that where it's just he's just building the world really effectively through his figurative language. I think that's important. There's another line on 170 into 171 where they're discussing the namesake of this of this book, where Bradbury writes, "No, the book slipped shut. If faces were judged, the freaks were no worse than many he'd seen slipping from the library late nights in his long career. There was only one thing for sure. 2 lines of Shakespeare said it. He should write them in the middle of the clock of books to fix the heart of his apprehension. By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. So vague, yet so immense. He did not want to live with it, yet he knew that, during this night. Unless he lived with it very well, he might have to live with it all of the rest of his life. At the window, he looked out and thought, Jim, Will, are you coming? Will you get here? Waiting, his flesh took paleness from his bones. That's the sort of thing. Flesh took paleness from his bones.
Mm-hmm.
That's can't beat that. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, it's really cool that they would bring that into his story. I mean, having it be what it's named after, it's pretty cool.
You have any more quotes you'd like to look at?
Yeah. I guess it's another play on their whole, good and evil thing, and this evil's weakness is good. And this is right towards the end, where he's Mr. Dark tries to trick Charles to separate from the boys.
Yeah.
He's like, here, come, he's over here, I saw him. And he's on top of it. He's like, he totally calls it, and he comes in, and instead of it's a kid, he could easily just beat this kid.
Yeah.
He gives him a hug, and again he starts, he gives him a firm hug, and the kid starts yelling. He's like, murder, murder. It's like, and he says, and he starts calling him evil.
Yeah.
And then he says to the boy, evil. Will's father laughed, which made the boys, wasp stung and brambled by the sound, jerk all the more violently. Evil. The man's hands were flypaper fastened to the small bones. Strange hearing that from you, Jed. So it must seem. Good to evil seems evil. So I will do only good to you, Jed. I will simply hold you and watch you poison yourself. I will do good to you, Jed, Mr. Dark, Mr. Proprietor, boy, until you tell me what's wrong with Jim. Wake him up. Set him free. Give him life. And then, he ends up, he's not able to do anything for Jim at that point. They had to do that later, but
yeah,
it ends up just being his just tenderness to the boy who, Jed, Mr. Dark, that kills him, much like the witch.
Mm-hmm.
He has him figured out.
Exactly. That's a good message for a little lighthearted horror novel.
Yeah, I like that's in there, and that's what some of these reviews I'm seeing, they thought that was too much overdone or something like that, or too preachy or something. Like, come on, that's a good message for a book that's audience could probably benefit from it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the kind of kids that read this just got over the fear of the dark, and it's not.
So teaching someone that good can conquer evil, it's like, come on, what's wrong with that?
Or that
And that's good for everyone.
Your fears are in your head.
Yeah, your fears only have the substance that you give them.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's
unless they're sharks or something.
Even
don't
then,
go by the sharks.
Even then. Like,
yeah. I mean,
have you even seen a shark?
Exactly. No, that's a good point. Or like quicksand. Maybe at that age, it's like, it's not as bad as the cartoons make it seem.
Exactly. It's still bad.
Yeah.
Don't
don't go walking around in quicksand.
Exactly.
This isn't Boom and Spice saying walk around in quicksand, but
exactly. Please avoid it if you can. But it's I feel like the people who complain about that are like the same people that are like, this show's too immature, and it's like a children's show.
Yeah.
It's like this is the exact
like
sort of...
You got to consider who it's for.
Because this imagery is really creepy, a lot of it. And if they did not flip it on its head at the end, then it would have just continued to be creepy.
There's definitely a point at that book where it's like he you can see how dark that he could go with it.
Oh, yeah.
And he kind of turns it around, and I think that's a cool balance to
Exactly.
teeter on the edge of just having something be like really grim dark and then turn it into have some light shining at the end.
Exactly. If you want horror, read a different book. Like, this isn't horror. This is spooky.
Mm-hmm.
and that's a line that Ray walks like a tightrope.
Yeah.
He's very close.
I think it was really well done too.
Boy.
I think that was really well done.
Any closing remarks?
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting too. This being my first time reading this, I haven't read much by Stephen King, but apparently, I've watched the movie at least. So whoever's like in directing that movie, and I know Stephen King. He said that Ray Bradbury is a big inspiration for him. This book is a lot like the end of It. Or It Too. You know, like I don't know. Spoilers there too, but it is the spoiler section.
Yeah, exactly. You knew what you were walking into.
You thought it was something wicked. It's everything.
Oh,
but yeah, no, it's kind of the same way of vanquishing the evil, and that's even a clown.
Yeah.
So it's cool the way that how much value other writers see in it.
That illusion's really interesting. A haunted, carnival-esque character comes back to town once in a generation.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yeah, very similar. And then the way they like vanquished it once and for all was belittling it.
Yeah, by not being afraid of it.
Yeah, similar things. But I mean, as I look at the back of this book, it's got Stephen King praising Bradbury, so it's they're cool.
Yeah, we'll cover Stephen King at some point. I don't know if we'll cover Bradbury soon too. Again,
I mean, I'd be happy to read
Fahrenheit
this
451 at some point.
I feel like that one for sure.
Either in the main line or in the fantasy one for sure.
Yeah, anytime there's a book that's like they use to promote their other books, it's like, hey, I wrote this. Try to read this. Like I'm interested in that.
Yeah. Fahrenheit 451. Fahrenheit, boom, 50 spice. Yeah.
Fahrenheit, boom, 50 spice.
Exactly. That's
God.
Exactly, dude. Boom and spice 451. There we go. Boom and spice 451.
It kind of goes.
Fahrenheit,
boom and spice. Yeah, there it is.
Fahrenheit, boom and spice. Yep. Perfect.
This is why we do Haiku Week.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to mention it at some point in a different podcast. We've talked about it off the air. The idea of someone asking me who the co-star was. That was so funny. Oh, man. And I guess logically it's me because it's boom and spice. But then again, I'm typically the big talker.
Yeah, no, the name, I mean, that was just purely because it sounds right.
Yeah, Spice and Boom book review in an alternate reality is what this is.
And although, reviewing books is probably a little bit more of what we do, we have reached in, we got into, we're getting into some book advice, though, so we're not breaking any promises.
Exactly. We always give advice. Gotta. And just a reminder, next time we're doing Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn. I don't know. I don't know if I like it as much as you do, Boom. I'm gonna be honest.
No?
It's little sexist, I can't lie, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In the same way that a lot of fantasy books are typecast to be.
Yeah, I know it. That's a couple of those tropes that are just poor.
And it seemed like he was going to subvert it, but he doesn't really. Sure, we're going to cover this in more depth later on, clearly. But the girl who's a Mistborn doesn't really reckon with the idea that she was commodified in her past all that much.
Mm-hmm.
At least not in the first 200 pages, which is what I've read.
No, it's a pretty decent. I don't know. I think he does an okay job towards the end or throughout with dealing with kind of the topic of mental health with her and the past because but no, it's got some issues.
And it's prostitution, the commodification of women, it's older than time. It's like the world's first profession.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, it doesn't mean you have to imbue your story with it so centrally, you know? It dominates the first 100 pages.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, yeah, it's real complicated in that sense. Also, the idea of the ska, are they a caste, a race, or like a profession?
So
Like
they
class?
are just. It's more of a class.
Yeah.
It's anyone whose ancestors were not on the side of the great emperor or whatever he's called.
Yeah.
I don't know how they keep track. I mean, it's like.
Yeah.
But that's basically who they are, because I don't think that they're physically different in any way. You know, like it's just their ancestry, and it has something to do. You know, he imbued like the regular people, like he gave them the ability to do alchemy, but there's so much like, you know, they intermingle so much that even that's not like distinguishable. So I don't know.
The another sort of controversial fantasy trope that he falls into is the concept of blood quotas, like the whole like, you know, like you're half a Mistborn or half of this, half of that. It's doesn't feel good, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of a blood quota, especially in a day and age where, like, you know, the idea of what makes someone what race, what entitles them to what privileges.
Yeah, that's one of my least like favorite deals in fantasy, and I guess in a broader sense of fantasy, like, is the whole like the chosen blood thing, or like or stuff like that, because I don't know, and I think I don't know. I'm the newer book that will definitely never make it into Fantasy Friday, just for the sheer like weight of it.
Maybe that'll be that long form series we're discussing.
That could be, because this one, there's a lot of like. I mean, it's better. It's a better book. It's like early work versus like his new, what he's become, and he's getting better.
That's good. Those tropes have a lot of reckoning to do, man.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming you for it.
I don't take it personally.
Exactly.
That's.
It's like I don't know, you know, the most popular fantasy work that we'll never talk about, you know, Harry Potter. They also deal in blood quotas. They're also weird about race. They're also kind of weird about gender. It's rampant
in there.
And blood quotas just feel weird, man. I don't like it. But I'm going to keep reading it. I'm going to finish it. Then we're going to talk about it. And I'll rip it apart. Like
We'll take it to Goodreads.
Exactly. Like a strong man in a phone book. Just whoosh. One of those deals. I'm going to rip it in half.
Gonna gift it back to me, just ripped in half. Thanks. Not.
Alright, boom. So next time, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. We already talked about it quite a bit, but...
Yeah, now you got a precursor, so, you know, like, if it is more than a week, at least you've had this little bit. when it doesn't come out this Friday, it's, you know...
We never said it'd be every Friday. It just said when it comes out, it will be on a Friday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It will be Fantasy Friday, hopefully. All of these things,
Boom.
It's all just a matter of remembering
Please.
it. Oh my gosh. I got into, like... I was going through these things last night, trying just to get some stuff edited. And I know we've referenced episodes, like, after recording on the same night, and I could not remember.
Oh,
I listened to like each episode. I got it now. I mean, like I'm not gonna go out of context.
Have you listened to Intro to Fantasy Friday?
Have I?
Yeah.
Not since I posted it.
It's one of the funniest ones we put out. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Yeah, I was listening to like, just like 10 seconds here and there to make sure it wasn't like one where we mentioned the other episodes. Because I know even in the episode we're like, we got to make sure we post this one first. So I was just trying to hear
silly.
that.
Yeah.
But I have a pretty good working memory of like which ones we recorded like at what point during the night. So I'm just going to try to like just make sure they get released like that. I wish there was a timestamp on this.
Me too.
This editor, like, or at least just some kind of like ordering system.
Well, on that note,
there's your glimpse of what it takes to edit a podcast.
Yeah, on that note, I've been Spice.
I'm Boom, and we'll see ya. We'll see you on the next Fantasy Friday.
See you next Friday, asterisk.
Hey everybody, this is Boom.
And I'm Spice, and we're starting another episode of Recent Reads, number 2.
That is right. The one where you get to see what we're reading. That isn't podcast stuff predominantly.
Some of it will be this episode.
I mean, I'm sure.
That's what I've been reading.
We do read the podcast stuff, so
yeah,
it will be sometimes in the recent reads.
In this case, we'll get right into it. Today I read 200 pages of the Mistborn book by Brandon Sanderson. It's all right. It's okay. We'll discuss it more in depth coming up. It's one you've been working on.
Yep. This is also by Brandon Sanderson. It's called The Way of Kings. It is book 1 of the Stormlight Archive, and that's his hat tossed into the epic fantasy ring. It's pretty good.
Nice.
Well, it's like a little over halfway into this. It's a large book, but it's good.
At some point we might cover it in our long form series we're starting up at some point.
Yeah, this is I think he's got 4 of these out right now with plans for 10. He's really churning them out. We'll see. I mean, at the rate that this one's going, I'd read number 2. Yeah. I don't know how quickly though, because it's a big commitment. This one isn't even on my list from last week's or last time period's episode of Recent Reads. Like I don't even think I mentioned this book. I think the one I said I really wanted to do is The Black Prism, which I still do. I acquired the copy of that book. It's sitting on my bookshelf. I might get into that one once this is over.
So the other thing I've been working on, I'm working to get through the John Cheever anthology I've been reading for months. It is just shy of 700 pages, and I am. How many pages am I in? Do I know? Yes, I am 450 pages in. So I'm almost done with it. I like it a lot. I'm not going to spoil too much because, I'm going to cover a whole lot of John Cheever in our short story series.
Yeah.
Well, that's not next, though. Next is we're doing Flannery O'Connor's The Turkey, and we're doing Neil Gaiman's Click Clack the Rattlebag.
Yep. Click Clack the Rattleback. I was about to say Knick Knack the Rattleback. It didn't sound right, so I didn't voice it.
Knick Knack Paddywhack.
Yeah.
Give a dog a bone.
Sheldon, any recent reads, bud? Nothing. Nothing from Sheldon.
Anything else?
I think that's all I got.
Yeah.
There's a shorter update, I guess. The more we do these, it's more just going to be an update.
I've got some new poems I've been reading, but you'll hear more about that in our latest episodes of Homemade Poetry and Poetry Potluck. Like a new form that not new to me. It's like a new car in the sense that, like, you know, it may have been owned by someone else before, but it's mine now. Exactly, this form of poetry. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Next time, you know, I might have some more to say on this Way of Kings. I don't want to speak too soon on it. You know, I'm not quite there yet. The ending could totally ruin it.
I've been getting into some Sherlock Holmes.
Oh yeah.
I'd like to cover him at some point. Not as if he's the author. That's Arthur Conan Doyle. That's you know, he believed in fairies.
Really?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I enjoy those quite a bit. At some point, I'd like to get Bam roped in on that because I know he likes mystery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he would actually be really into that. We went to the bookstore a couple weeks ago, and he was looking through like all kinds of mystery stuff. I don't think he grabbed anything because he wants to read Rebecca.
Yeah.
But now he's reading, you know, Hour of the Star.
Man, the moment he gets through a book, I want him on. Read one of them all the way through, and then we're done.
See, that's the tough part. See, all the way through. He'll crack open anything, but finishing's a different story. I mean, Hour of the Star, that is like 70 pages.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not very much. But, yeah, he should be on that one, he says. He should be reading it.
All right. Anything else?
I think I'm good.
All right, fantastic.
Short and sweet. That's what we're reading recently.
All right. If you have any recent reads, leave them in the comments below. And I've been Spice.
I'm Boom, and take care.
Keep on reading.